In order to really look at Griselda by Bononcini, we need to look at the Decameron, the novella that inspired the opera. The Decameron is a collection of novellas by the 14th century Italian author Giovanni Boccaccio. The book is structured as a frame story, containing 100 tales told by a group of 7 young women and 3 young men sheltering in a secluded villa just outside Florence to escape the Black Death. Boccaccio probably conceived the Decameron after the epidemic of 1348 and completed it by 1353.
At sunset I wander through the village, glowing in the twilight and so quiet. Well, it's quiet 'cause most people died of a plague caused by jealous witches.
The various tales of love in the Decameron range from the erotic to the tragic. Tales of wit, practical jokes, and life lessons contribute to the mosaic. In addition to its literary value and widespread influence, it provides a document of life at the time. Written in the vernacular of the Florentine language, it is considered a masterpiece of classical early Italian prose. In Italy, during the time of the Black Death, a group of 7 young women and 3 young men flee from plague-ridden Florence to a deserted villa in the countryside of Fiesole for 2 weeks. To pass the evenings, every member of the party tells a story each night, except for 1 day per week for chores, and the holy days in which they do no work at all, resulting in 10 nights of storytelling over the course of 2 weeks. Thus, by the end of the fortnight, they have told 100 stories. Each of the 10 characters is charged as king or queen of the company for one of the 10 days in turn. This charge extends to choosing the theme of the stories for that day, and all but 2 days have topics assigned. Examples of the power of fortune. Examples of the power of human will. Love tales that end tragically. Love tales that end happily. Clever replies that save the speaker. Tricks that women play on men. Tricks that people play on each other in general. And examples of virtue. Only Dioneo, who usually tells the 10th tale each day, has the right to tell a tale on any topic he wishes due to his wit. Many authors have argued that Dioneo expresses the views of Boccaccio himself. Each day also includes a short introduction and conclusion to continue the frame of the tales by describing other daily activities besides storytelling. These frame tale interludes frequently include transcriptions of Italian folk songs. The interactions among tales in a day or across days as Boccaccio spins variations and reversals of previous material forms a whole and not just a collection of stories. The basic plots of the stories include mocking the lust and greed of the clergy, tensions in Italian society between the new wealthy commercial class and noble families, and the perils and adventures of traveling merchants. Giovanni Bononcini, the composer of Griselda, took the idea for his opera from the 10th tale of the Decameron. The story tells of the Marquis of Saluzzo. Gualtieri, overborne by the entreaties of his vassals, consents to take a wife, but, being minded to please himself in the choice of her, takes a husbandman's daughter named Griselda. He has 2 children by her, both of whom he makes her believe that he has put to death. Afterward, feigning to be tired of her and to have taken another wife, he turns her out of doors in her shift, and brings his daughter into the house in the guise of his bride. But, finding Griselda patient under it all, he brings her home again and shows her children, now grown up, and honors her, and causes her to be honored as Marchioness. Dioneo tells the final and possibly most retold story of the Decameron. Although Boccaccio was the first to record the story, he most certainly did not invent it. It was probably already circulating in oral tradition when the Decameron was written. Now that we know the meaning behind the Decameron and why it is so important to Bononcini's opera, let's hand it over to Franny so she can tell us more about the opera itself.
Giovanni Bononcini's Griselda is an opera seria, a serious, noble form of opera which dominated Europe in the early 18th century. Generally, an opera seria begins with an instrumental overture, then is followed with alternating recitatives and arias. The recitatives contain dialogue to move the performance along, while the arias express the emotions of the main characters of the story. Typically, two types of recitatives were used: secco, accompanied only by continuo, and stromentato, accompanied by an orchestra. The stromentato recitatives were especially used after intense moments of passion. Another characteristic of the opera seria is that it follows an ABA format. The opera, set in 3 acts, presents a musical theme in the first act, a corresponding one in the second, and ends with a more elaborate repetition of the original theme. Griselda is one of Bononcini's most famous works because, contrary to the operas of the day, the plot focuses more on pastoral life rather than praising and honoring an absolute monarch. In the revised version of Griselda, King Gualtiero falls in love with and marries the peasant woman Griselda. The Dolcet arias, sung by the lead singers, focus on her former life in the pastures as a shepherdess. The king adores her, but fears the nobles will not approve of her. In response, he puts Griselda through a series of tests to determine the steadfastness of her love for him. He lies to her about the death of their long-lost daughter, banishes her to the countryside, and then announces his marriage to another woman, Almirena, who happens to be Griselda and Gualtiero's daughter. Almirena, however, does not want to marry the king because she loves Ernesto, but in the age of absolutism, kings could have any woman they desired. Ernesto loves Almirena deeply. When he learns about her marriage, he laments his loss through the aria Per la Gloria d'Adoravi. Originally, Ernesto's part was written for a castrato, men commonly hired for their sweet, high-ranged voices, but in more modern productions, the part is given to a tenor or baritone. Originally in Italian, the translation for Ernesto's aria is as follows: "For the love my heart doth prize, O charmful eyes, I would adore ye. For me, my love is pain. I know 'tis all in vain, 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 yet kneel before ye. Love is pain, all in vain I implore ye. Hopeless 'tis to look for kindness, foolish fondness with sighs t'implore ye. But whoe'er might woo your gaze, bask in your sunny rays, and not adore ye? Love is pain, all in vain I implore ye." Through this piece, Ernesto expresses his emotion of loss and the foolishness he feels for loving Almirena. He also understands that it's impossible to be in her presence without adoring her because she's so beautiful, warm, and gentle, like rays of sunlight. In his mind, how could anyone resist her? The king's love for her was bound to happen. In truth, Gualtiero has no desire to take Almirena as his wife. These characteristics are common to the typical aria, as they focus on the expression of intense emotion. Bononcini, however, often juxtaposed his music with the content of the lyrics. For example, in Per la Gloria, the lyrics focus on Ernesto's pain, but the tune itself is in a major mode, with a cheerful sound and upbeat tempo. What makes Bononcini's operas unique are his straightforward melodies and the rich beauty of his original harmonies, which contrasted Handel's more triumphant and vindictive rage. His music entered into pre-classical simplicity with less ornamentation than other Baroque composers. Some found this pleasant to the ears, while others considered it dull and boring in comparison to Bononcini's rivals. Other people believed he was the best of his day at capturing the vocal inflections, utterances, exclamations, and even pauses of his native tongue in his recitatives. When paired with his sweet arias, Bononcini's recitatives created an exquisite show that delighted the palates of many of his listeners. Those scores of Bononcini's recitatives are no longer in existence. His eloquence and exact expression of the Italian language live on.
Vagheggiar